Alrighty, so this is going to be a bit of a short version of the preview compared to what I usually do with the big board because usually with a big board I have enough room to fill out like all the information like head-to-head and also the last five head-to-head matchup, but because with the travel board it's a little bit small, I decided to do a condensed version of it, and I would expect this video should be a little bit shorter in terms of what I usually do with the preview because I won't be mentioning like last five head-to-head matchup, and it's just kind of me just kind of thinking of how these matchup is going to turn out. Also, I'm wearing Orlando City because, you know, on Wednesday, I'll be heading up to Orlando to watch the game between Orlando and the Philadelphia Union, which that should be a very interesting game, especially when it comes to there's aspiration of playoffs and also the seeding that is up for grabs in that game as well. But we'll get to that game in just a bit. But first of all, we're going to first talk about the first of what would be, I think, 6 games that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Yes, there's going to be 14 games. That's going to be happening on Wednesday. All of them happening between 7:30 p.m. Eastern all the way up to midnight 30 a.m. Pacific time. And before you ask, no, there's no way I can watch all of these games. I'll probably watch some of these games when I get back to the hotel, but there's no way I'm going to be able to watch all these games, especially the 7:30 game, that is, because I'll be at a game when that happens. But in the first one, it's Atlanta versus Montreal. So, yeah, this game is kind of a bit of a playoff six-pointer in terms of the Eastern Conference race. So, you know, the Eastern Conference race, now it seems like we have about teams between 8 to 14 that is still in the race. Obviously, the lone team that is out is Chicago, who were eliminated last night. But, or actually not last night, but on Saturday night. That is. But, yeah, this is kind of a playoff six-pointer because both of these teams are only 3 points behind. They're both below the red line. Montreal is the first team that is below the red line, but they're tied with both Philly and Toronto for those spots. And they do actually control their own destiny because, you know, they do play a game more than what TFC is. And as I mentioned before, TFC doesn't really control their own destiny, even though they're in their 8th position. But in terms of the all-time meetings, 7-3-4 in favor of Atlanta. And, you know, for Montreal, they have definitely been playing much better in the last couple of games. But how much is that because they've been playing easy opponent? I mean, Montreal has played a couple of very easy teams lately. You know, against Atlanta is not considered to be an easy opponent when they're playing on the road, but then again, Atlanta fans will argue that, yeah, they haven't been doing very well this season at home, so it might as well be an easy opponent. But either way, should be a very interesting game, and again, there should be some movement, again, when we look at the crazy playoff race that we're going to see in the East in just a bit. Now, moving on, we got Charlotte versus the Chicago Fire. So Charlotte is 11-9-11, whereas Chicago is 7-9-16. So Chicago is pretty much done right now. They're pretty much playing the spoiler road against a Charlotte team that I just watched on Saturday night. I thought they played very well in that game against Inter Miami. It feels like they're back to where they were in the beginning of the season, where they were at times shown to be a very disciplined kind of defensive team, and on the attack, at least they're a little bit optimistic on the attack to get points, and they have a chance to get points here at home against, as I mentioned, a Fire team that's already eliminated. They have a good record again. The Fire 4-0-1. They have won 4 out of the 5 meeting against the Chicago Fire, and it's safe to say that there's a chance that they should be able to get a win, especially they've been very good this season at Bank of America Stadium. Now, moving on, and this is probably the matchup that it sucks, the fact that I won't be able to watch this game because I'm going to be going to the Orlando and Philly game, but this is probably the mouth-watering matchup of the midweek action. It's Columbus versus Inter Miami, preview potentially the Eastern Conference final if both of those teams get to that point. Columbus 16-9-5, whereas Miami is 19-8-4. All-time meaning 4-1-3 in favor of Inter Miami. Keep in mind, if Inter Miami can win this game against Columbus, they would actually clinch the Supporters' Shield as a resort. So, yeah, I mean, we know that Miami probably is going to clinch the Supporters' Shield down the line. It's going to take a massive collapse and then just a massive comeback from Columbus or Cincinnati or even the Galaxy themselves to get to that spot. But, yeah, this should be a very interesting test for Inter Miami, especially, you know, the last game they didn't play well against Charlotte. Well, they did play well, but they just couldn't finish. They have to do that against Columbus, especially when they're the road team Columbus has been very good this season at home, and as it is the case ever since they took Wilfried Nancy took charge of that team. He's only lost like 3 times at home ever since he took charge of this team. So yeah, this should be a mouth-watering matchup between 2 heavyweights in the Eastern Conference. Speaking of heavyweights, well, I mean, this isn't really a heavyweight, but it could be also a preview of a playoff matchup between NYCFC and FC Cincinnati. And both of these teams kind of had contrasted week. You know, NYCFC coming off that big 5-1 win against the Red Bulls. Let's see if that can give them some confidence, or maybe that could potentially lead to some of a letdown, because when you get that big of a victory against your rival, I mean, it can go both ways. It can fire you up, or it can be a bit of a letdown. And against a Cincinnati side that is fresh off of a 2-1 disappointing loss at home, the good news is they're on the road in this game. This season, for whatever reason, Cincinnati are better on the road than they're at home this year. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 6-2-5 in favor of NYCFC. So it's pretty close in terms of the all-time meeting. But yeah, should be very interesting to see whether or not, and especially with the way that, you know, NYCFC has been very good this season at home for the most part against a Cincinnati team is good on the road. Something's going to have to give, and we'll see how this matchup, of course, would turn out. Now, moving on is the game that I'm going, which is Orlando versus the Philadelphia Union. So Orlando 13-7-11. They'll continue to climb up the standing, trying to get a at least home field advantage in the first round against a Union side that is currently in 9th place. They do control their own destiny, the Union, unlike unlike Toronto FC in terms of the playoffs, and they can actually climb up to 8th position and actually host a wild card game if they win out the rest of the game, and it doesn't matter what Toronto does. But they have a 9-10-12 record, all-time meeting 8-6-7 in favor of the Philadelphia Union. So yeah, this should be. I gotta say this. I'm actually really excited about this matchup, not just because I'm going to Inter and Co Stadium for the very first time, but it's also the fact that this is a very interesting matchup between 2 teams that have been playing very well. I mean, I mentioned Orlando has been one of the hottest team in the East for a while. It feels like this is a replica of what we saw last season when they really start kicking gear into the second half of the season. And then you have this Union team that, yes, they did drew in the last game, but before that, they've been really unstoppable on the attacking end. And it's also going to be between two good goalkeeper as well in terms of Gillespie and Andre Blake. If Andre Blake, of course, is going to be ready for this game. I don't think he has played in the last couple of games. It's been Andrew Rick that's been the goalkeeper, and even though that's the case, Rick has actually done a really good job between the stick for the Union. So yeah, very fascinating matchup. Should be. I expect this should be also a tight game. I don't expect this game to have a lot of goal scoring, but it should be tight and should be very interesting to see, and also a good experience to go to Inter and Co and knock off another stadium off my list of MLS stadium that I visit. But now, moving on into the last game that starts 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, is Toronto and the New York Red Bulls. So Toronto 11-4-17, whereas the Red Bulls is 10-14-7. Safe to say that this might be a desperation derby. I mean, I know every game down the stretch feels like a desperation derby, but it kind of feels like it's the case for this game. I mean, both of these teams desperately need wins with the way that Toronto need wins so that they can at least hope that some teams below them lost so they can control their own destiny again in the playoffs. Remember, they're the only team to not play on decision day. We could have a situation like what we did a year ago where DC got eliminated before we head to the final day, even though they were above the red line. That was kind of a weird situation. And again, that would all be solved next year when San Diego come into the league. The Red Bulls 10-4-17. They're in a tailspin right now. I mean, the New York Red Bulls, they are just self-destruct. They look like, even though they made the playoffs of the 15 consecutive season, which extends the record for the longest active playoff streak in MLS. I mean, if you ask any Red Bulls fan, they don't care about that. They care about them actually getting over the hump, and at least for what we've seen in the last month or two, that doesn't seem like there's a sign that So Metro moment is not going to happen. It feels like that So Metro moment is going to be inevitable. So yeah, both of these teams desperately need a win. But in terms of the all-time record, 23-10-11 over the Red Bulls. So at least the Red Bulls have had a little bit ownage over Toronto, at least in the all-time meeting. But yeah, again, both of these teams desperately need 3 points. One of them improve their playoff chances, and then the other team just simply getting a win to end this really fall off the cliff kind of moment the Red Bulls have been going through for the past month or two. Now, moving on, we got Houston versus the New England Revolution. This, believe it or not, is only one of 3 games that start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. There was a lot of 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific game over the weekend, but we only get 3. One of them is the Houston Dynamo versus the New England Revolution. So the Rams have a 14-8-7 record over the Dynamo, so they have actually had a pretty good record against Houston, and this is another opponent that Houston doesn't really do relatively well. So we'll see whether or not if they can do something different in this game. I mean, the good news is at least they're playing at home in this one, and as I said before, usually when Houston are playing at home, they're a good team, but the Dynamo this season, they haven't been as good of a home team as they have been. It's been the road form that's been what's been very good, and it's kind of crazy to say. If you imagine a couple of years ago, I say the Dynamo would be better on the road compared to them playing at home. That would just be completely false. They never usually do well on the road, but this season that's kind of how it is, and it really ever since Ben Olsen took charge of this team, they've been a much better road team compared to what they were all those years under different managers. So yeah, we'll see if Houston can get a win. Obviously, New England desperately need a win. I mean, this is almost kind of a must-win game. Their playoff hole it's winning. They need to almost win out for the rest of the season if they want to even get into the conversation of the playoff race, and we'll see whether or not that is the case. Speaking of another team that needs to kind of win out, and that of course is Nashville and DC United. Though again, this is another matchup between 2 teams that is in that playoff battle, so whenever that happens, it's definitely a playoff 6-pointer. 8-9-14 is the record for Nashville, whereas DC 8-10-13. In terms of the all-time meaning, 4-2-1 in favor of Nashville. So Nashville has actually had a really good record against DC United. But again, it's a playoff 6-pointer. You know that both of these teams desperately need a win to improve their chances of making the playoffs. And we'll see who, of course, can do so. I mean, DC has been playing relatively well in the last couple of games, and they're definitely going to be a big factor. I think out of all the teams that's below the red line, I think it's probably between DC and Montreal that those are the 2 that I think can really make some noise in terms of challenging for those teams that's above the red line, and we'll see whether or not that's the case, or if Nashville can get themselves a massive win. I mean, that loss against New England really hurts. Like that's now put. They had some momentum heading into that game, and then they lost that one, and now they look like they're staring back down the barrel again, and like New England, they kind of have to win out almost the rest of the season if they even have any shot of trying to make it to the playoffs, and also need a lot of help from other team as well. Now, moving on, we got Colorado versus the LA Galaxy. So we're going to get to start talking about some of these Western Conference matchup. And unlike the East, the Western Conference playoff race is all but over. It's all about playing for a seeding now. The seeding is still pretty interesting, at least in terms of the West. And one of this matchup is between the Rapids and the Galaxy, though the Galaxy looks like they're probably going to secure first place. I mean, barring any massive collapse, it feels like they're going to secure first place, though, I think maybe LAFC might have something to say if they do get hot at the right time like they usually do in October. But the Galaxy 17-7-7, whereas the Rapids 15-5-11, all-time meaning 46-13-34 in favor of the Galaxy. And there's no doubt that, for the Rapids, they need to bounce back in a big way. I mean, that was a pretty, I think between that game that they had against Minnesota and the one against Sporting KC, that was probably the most disappointing result that Colorado has had all season long, and that I would say maybe that one might be the most disappointing because they didn't even score a goal on like they did against Sporting KC. They were just completely outmanned by a Minnesota team that they're not known for outmanning team, especially when they're playing at home. So they need a big bounce back win. Unfortunately, they have to face against the best team in the league, and also, unfortunately, you're going to have to face probably one of the best attack in the league as well. So that should be interesting to see how this, of course, would turn out. Now, moving on, we got RSL versus Minnesota. So speaking of Minnesota, again, ever since the Leagues Cup is over, Minnesota has definitely been playing much better. I am not surprised whatsoever. Those reinforcements that I've mentioned before that needs to get going. Safe to say that they definitely got going. I mean, that Kelvin Yeboah guy, he is literally red hot right now. He's started to get to the rate where it really kind of reminds me a little bit of when Cucho Hernandez break into the league and was scoring every single game. Now, I don't know if he's going to be somewhere close to what Cucho Hernandez is, and if that is the case, my oh my, this is going to be a generational kind of talent that Minnesota just landed in their arms. But they play against RSL in this one. It's a road game, so usually that is a good thing for the Loons because they've mostly this season has been a better team on the road than they're playing at home, and they're playing against an RSL team that they have had some good record against them, though a lot of these games ends up in a draw. Like literally 8 of these 16 meeting ends in a draw. Like half of the time it ends in a draw. 5-8-3 is the record. This is the first of 2 games that start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Oh, did I mention that in the other game as well? Both Colorado and RSL is playing at home, so that's why we get 2 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific games. So yeah, again for Minnesota, I know they got an impressive win in the last game, but they need to keep it going. Like you can't just have like one impressive win and then the next game you just falter. I have seen that before from this Loons team, and I really hope that that's not the case. I hope that they keep the momentum going because they've been playing relatively well, and they have a chance to do so against an RSL team that, like I said, they have not been playing well for the last couple of months. And I even mentioned before, this team look very fraudulent right now. This team does not look like a team that is ready to compete for the Western Conference title, and that's a shame because this was supposed to be one of the team a couple of months ago. We said that they could have a chance to compete in the Western Conference, and now it doesn't seem like that is the case anymore. Now, moving on, we got LAFC versus St. Louis City. So LAFC's 15-7-8, whereas St. Louis is 13-11. This game starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. It's one of 4 late game that's going to start at that time. All-time meeting, LAFC has pretty much dominated this meeting. They won all the meeting except for one of them. St. Louis is still looking for their first win against LAFC. And what the heck just happened there? I heard like a big knock there. Hopefully that was nothing serious. But yeah, anyway. Looks like a game that LAFC probably got this one in the bag. Again, I said before, LAFC, it feels like this season is similar to last year, where usually it's around September, they kind of slow down a little bit. A lot of people asking, what the heck is going on with LAFC? Why are they starting to fall apart? Usually around October, that's when they started to turn on again and make an MLS Cup run. And knowing the fact that they're just fresh off a U.S. Open Cup win, and they went to Cincinnati and got all 3 points in that, this LAFC team is back, and that's bad news for the rest of the Western Conference if that is the case. And, it will be not an easy test, I will say. St. Louis has been playing much better, and that, they're still fighting for playoff chances, albeit that's playoff chances is pretty much close to being non-existent, but they're going to fight to the very last down. That's what St. Louis wanted to do, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so in this game against LAFC. Speaking of a team that's also have their playoff hope is about to dwindle, that's Austin FC. So they're playing against Portland in this one, though unlike St. Louis, Austin has not really been playing relatively well. They look like kind of dead man walking for a long time now. 9-9-13 is their record, whereas Timbers, they have a 12-9-10 record. The bad news for the Timbers is that they did now drop down to 9th position, and if the playoffs started today, Minnesota would actually host the Portland Timbers in the wild card game, and I'm pretty confident that they could win that game, Minnesota, even though I know they haven't been playing very well at home. They always seems to have the onus over the Timbers when they're playing at home. But that being said, all-time meeting 5-1-2 in favor of the Portland Timbers. And again, the Timbers have been playing relatively well. They're a team that, these next couple of games, they have a chance that if they're able to get wins at home, they can get themselves up in the standings and don't even have to worry about playing against Minnesota in the wild card round. And we'll see whether or not that is the case against an Austin team that, they're kind of dead man walking. I know they're still mathematically alive in the playoffs, but knowing how points have been hard to come by for them, it's just going to be a matter of time before they get eliminated. I wouldn't even be surprised if they get eliminated first before St. Louis does. That's how bad things have been kind of with this Austin team. Now, moving on, we got the Quakes and FC Dallas, so another team that is kind of still mathematically alive, but, that 3-1 loss against Orlando, that one hurts considering that it was at home, and that really the home points is kind of almost kind of the saving grace that Dallas have, at least making it a little bit interesting. But they lost that one. Now they have to go on the road, which is something that they have not done very well this season. The good news is, at least this time, they play against the worst team in the league. That is the Quakes. And the Quakes, at least for the last couple of weeks, they're more interesting in thinking about Cancun rather than actually playing the spoiler role. They have an ugly 5-3-23 record, whereas Dallas, 10-7 and 14. In terms of the all-time meaning, 29, 22, and 22 in favor of the Quakes. One thing I will say is that the Quakes does have a pretty good record against FC Dallas. And again, the thing about the Quakes is that when they do have a little ownage over some team, for whatever reason, the Quakes, the three teams that I can think of that they kind of have ownage right now is Seattle, RSL, and also FC Dallas, and it just happened to be it. They're playing against FC Dallas. There was a long stretch where FC Dallas just couldn't beat the Quakes. So again, this is a tricky matchup for Dallas. This is a game that, again, not only they're playing on the road, which is something they're not very good this season. They only won once this season on the road, but they're playing against a team that they just don't have a really good history against, and they need a win in this one. I mean, if they don't get a win in this one, you might as well just put an E next to Dallas' name. Like, if you don't win against the worst team in the league, even if you're playing on the road, you don't deserve to be in playoffs whatsoever. Now, moving on into the last game, we got Vancouver versus the Seattle Sounders. So there's the other forgotten Cascadia rivalry. Though I think this game maybe could determine who's win the Cascadia Cup. I didn't actually look in the standings, that is. But Vancouver 13-8-9, whereas Seattle is 14-3-9. Seattle does have a better record over the Whitecaps. 19-12-10 is their all-time record. And there's no doubt that the Sounders have been playing well lately, and that still trying to get themselves up in the standing, trying to maybe get a home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. But it's not going to be easy because Vancouver is thinking about the same thing as well. So that should be an intriguing game between two teams that want home field advantage, and whoever wins this one potentially have a chance to not only win the Cascadia Cup, but maybe get home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of the preview of all these games. Like I said, it's a relatively quick preview because I just kind of give you guys basic information and just kind of what I think about each of these matchup. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these games and your prediction for all these games as well. And as I said before, I have no idea when I'm going to be able to review these games. I'll probably let you guys know when I do upload the review of all of these games in just a bit. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.